Welcome to Infidelity Nest. In today's video, subscribe, click the like button, and turn on notifications so you never miss another unforgettable story. I wasn't supposed to be there that night. Not in that apartment, not on that couch, and definitely not in that moment that changed everything. But life has a strange, almost cruel way of bending your path toward places you swore you'd never go again. It tears up the map you drew for yourself and hands you chaos instead. And sometimes, in that chaos, you find the truth you were never ready to face. I used to believe my life was simple, organized and safe, like a well-written book with no surprise endings. I thought love was supposed to be unshakable, something that once promised never fades. I believed that if you gave your whole heart, the universe would protect it. But love doesn't always end in flames or fury. Sometimes it just disappears. It slips away quietly, leaving behind nothing but silence. A silence so deep it echoes in your chest, so heavy it drowns your laughter, so endless it becomes part of your breathing. When he left, he didn't even have the courage to face me. No final words, no tears, no closure. 5 years. 5 years of shared mornings, small jokes, whispered plans, all reduced to a note taped to the fridge. A half-hearted apology scribbled in ink that already looked faded. Next to it, a single house key. I stared at that key for what felt like hours. It was just a cold piece of metal, but under that kitchen light, it seemed to glint with cruelty. The longer I stared, the deeper the ache cut into me. Like every memory, every promise, every "I love you" had been melted into that silver shape. I pressed it into my palm until I couldn't tell whether the sting came from its edge or from the truth finally sinking in. Everything I'd built was gone. That silence that followed? It wasn't peaceful. It was screaming silence, the kind that fills every room with ghosts, the kind that turns every heartbeat into a reminder of what you lost. That's when I called Carrie, my best friend since we were kids. She always knew when something was wrong, even from the way I said hello. I didn't even get 2 words out before she interrupted me. "Pack a bag," she said softly. "You're staying with me tonight." She didn't ask why. She didn't need to. That's who Carrie was. Someone who didn't need details to show up for you. I said yes before she could finish. Because at that moment, running away from that apartment felt like the only way I could breathe again. Carrie's apartment was in one of those old downtown buildings. Tall brick walls, high ceilings, wide windows that caught the sunset like a painting. It had this quiet kind of warmth, like the walls themselves had seen hundreds of stories before ours. Even in stillness, the place felt alive. When I arrived, Carrie hugged me tight, the kind of hug that said, "You don't have to explain anything right now. You'll have the apartment to yourself for a while," she told me. "Nathan's away for work, Nathan." Her older brother. I remembered him from our school days, quiet, reserved, the one who always carried a guitar and a faraway look. He was the kind of person who seemed to exist halfway between music and silence. I hadn't seen him in years, but hearing he wouldn't be around was a relief. The last thing I wanted was company. I wanted stillness, space to fall apart quietly. For 2 days, I moved like a ghost through Carrie's home. I didn't eat much. I barely slept. I drank coffee that tasted like nothing and stared out of windows, counting the hours by how the sunlight shifted across the floor. I was breathing, but not really alive. Then, on the 3rd evening, everything changed. The sound of the front door opening sliced through the quiet. Footsteps. Slow, unhurried. I froze. Then I saw him. Nathan. But he wasn't the same quiet boy I remembered from school. Time had reshaped him, softened him in some ways, deepened him in others. His hair was slightly messy, his shirt wrinkled, his posture relaxed but steady, the kind of steady that made the room feel anchored. His silence wasn't emptiness anymore. It was depth. Our eyes met. For a moment it felt like the air thickened between us. He gave a polite nod. Just enough acknowledgement to make me remember I wasn't invisible. "Hey," he said. Just one word, calm and unbothered, but warm. "Hi," I managed to whisper back. That was it. 2 small words hanging in the air, awkward but real. For days after that, we barely spoke. Our communication was limited to quiet nods, polite smiles, small exchanges like, "Morning," or "Thanks." We moved around each other carefully, two strangers sharing a space, pretending not to notice how aware we actually were of each other. And maybe that's what I needed. Not connection, just presence. Someone else's quiet to match mine. But silence has a way of changing shape. It doesn't stay empty for long. One evening I couldn't stand being indoors anymore. The walls felt like they were pressing in, so I went for a walk. The city outside hummed softly under flickering streetlights. The autumn air was sharp, biting against my skin. Fallen leaves chased each other across the sidewalk, whispering secrets only the lonely could hear. For the first time, I realized how big the world still was, and how small I had made it inside my grief. When I came back, the apartment was dimly lit. The air smelled faintly of rosemary and red wine. Nathan was on the couch, one leg propped over the other, a glass in hand, watching the TV. The movie playing was Notting Hill. I blinked, surprised. "You like this movie?" I teased lightly. He glanced up, the faintest grin tugging at his lips. "Only when I'm depressed," he replied. It was the first joke I'd heard in weeks. And unexpectedly, I laughed. Not a polite laugh, a real one, the kind that shakes something loose inside you. There were already 2 glasses of wine poured on the table. He didn't invite me to join him, but he didn't have to. I sat at the far end of the couch, careful not to intrude, and yet not quite distant either. The movie filled the silence between us. Soft dialogue, familiar lines, the kind of comfort that sneaks up on you without asking permission. When Julia Roberts said, "I'm just a girl," standing in front of a boy, asking him to love her, I felt Nathan's gaze shift. Just for a second, just enough to make me aware of him. Really aware. That moment. It was small, but sometimes small moments carry more weight than entire years. That night became the quiet beginning of something neither of us expected. Days slipped into weeks. The apartment fell into rhythm. Morning smelled like coffee and sunlight. The sound of his footsteps became part of my mornings. Steady, grounding. We shared small things, notes about groceries, shared jokes, a mutual understanding that didn't need words. It wasn't love. Not yet. It was something softer. The comfort of knowing someone sees you without asking for more than you can give. Then one night, I couldn't sleep. The clock blinked 2:47 a.m. I wandered into the living room, barefoot, wearing one of Carrie's oversized shirts. The apartment was quiet, bathed in the blue light of Nathan's phone screen. He was sitting there, deep in thought. "Can't sleep?" he asked without looking up. I shook my head. "You?" He smiled faintly, putting the phone aside. "Same." He patted the couch beside him, a silent invitation. I hesitated. Then I sat. For a while, we said nothing. The kind of silence that listens instead of weighing you down. Outside, the city murmured softly, cars distant and steady. Then out of nowhere, he asked, "Do you miss him?" I didn't expect it. I froze. My eyes traced the pattern of the rug at our feet. "I don't know," I said quietly. "Sometimes I wonder if I ever really had him." Nathan turned to me. His gaze was steady, not pitying, not prying, just calm. "Maybe it's a good thing he's gone," he said gently. No judgment, no softness, just truth. And somehow that truth hit harder than any comfort could. I looked at him for a long time. Maybe searching for judgment, maybe for understanding. But what I found in his eyes was something else. The quiet certainty of someone who's seen people break and still rebuild. After a long pause, I said something I hadn't even admitted to myself. "I think I'm more afraid of being wanted than being alone." Nathan inhaled sharply, like he hadn't expected that answer. Then, in a whisper that seemed to hang between us, he said, "Rachel, you've always been wanted. You just never noticed." The words landed like a quiet explosion. I felt something shift deep inside me, like a door I didn't know existed had just opened. We didn't move, didn't speak, but suddenly, everything felt smaller. the room, the world, until all that existed was the warmth between us. His hand rested near mine, not touching, just close enough that I could feel his presence. That night didn't change because of what happened, but because of what it meant. It reminded me that grief doesn't erase who you are. It only hides you for a while. And sometimes, it takes someone seeing through your silence to remind you who you were before the heartbreak. Nathan never tried to fix me. He never made promises or grand gestures. He just stayed, present, honest, real, and that was enough to begin again. The days that followed were quieter, but heavier with meaning. Every glance lasted a heartbeat too long. Every smile carried an echo. Every accidental touch left a memory. We never talked about that night. We didn't have to. Some things are too fragile for words. One morning, sunlight poured golden through the windows. I was making coffee when I noticed him watching me. "You look more like yourself today," he said softly. I smiled, and for the first time in months, I felt that it was true. Grief wasn't my identity anymore. It was just a shadow now. Something that followed, but no longer defined me, and nah,